Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of Daily IoT. On today's episode, I want to talk about DFM, Design for Manufacturability. And this is something, it's a term that I knew of before I started this process and knew what it meant, and could, high level talk about, design for manufacturability means making your product easy to manufacture and put together and assemble and all these other things and all these generic terms to describe what it means. But now that I actually am working on making a product, it has kind of new meaning when you start to think of the scale that you are creating a product at and that you want to create it at. And so I just want to talk about a couple of concrete examples now that I have a product in hand that I'm working on and going through of what DFM means and how you can think about it in your own project. And so first of all, a little bit of backstory on this. DFM is the reason, not the only reason, is a major reason Juicero failed. If you haven't seen that, I'll put some links down below, but they created the $700 juice presser, and it was, beautifully engineered, but it had all of these custom parts and gears and all this other stuff. And when you do that, it works and it comes together and it looks cool and beautiful and does the job super well. Apparently, but there's a cost to that. Custom making all those parts, the more parts you have to custom make, the more expensive things get, and then the price explodes, and then the market can't handle what you want to charge for your product and things like that. And so that's just a quick real life. If you don't think about DFM, it could kill your product and what you're trying to do. And so with the hockey puck projects, there's not a lot here, but again, scale matters. There's not a lot of DFM problems for a run of 100, but if I was making a run of 100,000, very different story. And so let's go through this. So first of all, there is DFM in all phases of the project, and for the hockey puck project, there's several key components where DFM could come into play. And so I've got the enclosure, which in my case is the hockey puck. There's the printed circuit board, which again, there's even DFM rules around how to route things and do that can make them easier and more reliable when they're fabbed and things like that. I don't know a ton about that. I just know that a lot of that is involved. It's something that your layout person should know inside and out about traces and ground planes and stuff like that. A lot of DFM right here on the board. For the puck project, there's not a lot here, at least that I've found yet. This comes, I think, more into play with maybe high frequency things like that, but also very complex circuits and how you need to run traces, multi-layer boards. Mine's just a 2-layer. I've got traces on front and back. But even things on how the shape of the board can be a big deal because they cost more to make into specialized shape. That's a design for manufacturability thing that you should take into consideration. And so, but for the hockey puck project, not a lot going on DFM-wise on the actual PCB. However, how you lay things out on the board can affect other things, like the screen connector is right here because I need the screen I don't have one, to connect and fold up around so that it can show up through the top of the puck. Those are things that you need to think about. You can't just put the connector anywhere because it only has like a not even 1/4 of an inch cable on it to be able to move into place. And so you have to place those things in just the right spot and things like that. So I'm not going to talk too much about that, but I want to talk more about the other two factors here. And so PCB is one. The next one is enclosure. The enclosure, depending on how you make it, again, can be a DFM concern. How complex is it to form the parts that you need in the enclosure that you want to put your product inside? And in my case, it's a very simple box, but even in this very simple box, there were some things to consider, and that's why Agility and Keith at Agility came up with 2 different approaches that I talked about briefly in the first episode when I got the hardware. Here are the 2 different case tops. The bottom is very simple. There's no DFM stuff here except for one thing, which I'll talk about in a second. But on the top, there's this idea of we need to get the screen mounted and mounted consistently, repeatably, and all these other things. And so how do you do that? Well, in this case, it looks like it's there's no way a screen can get there, but that's what the slit's for. The screen slides through that, and then you just It's a perfectly cut out shape. You slap the screen on with a piece of, double-sided tape or whatever, or you can even glue it, I guess, and it holds it in. There's nothing to think about when you're assembling them. This is a DFM note for assembly. If I had to make 100,000 of these and it was just on an assembly line, very easy for somebody to slide the screen up through there, slap it down with a sticker, and it's done. They don't have to think anything else about it. So very easy for assembly, a DFM concern there. On this one, however, it's just the hole. It's perfectly sized to the display area of the screen. But how do you get the screen on here and lined up perfectly? Well, there's this recess in the back you probably can't see to help you align it, but the alignment is very hard to get just right. And then what do you hold it down with? Is that a piece of tape? I'm gonna mess around with hot glue. But these are things that would have to be done at scale as you scale up. And so if it's hot glue, now the assembly house has to have hot glue guns and somebody's got to hot glue it, but then they also have to look at it. And what I'm going to do for the first run is make sure it's perfectly lined up, because it's a very low tolerance for getting it even just a little bit crooked, because you'll see it when the display lights up. And so there's a lot more to think about. It's a harder process to properly place the screen on this case than it is on this case. That is a DFM issue for going to larger scale production runs. And so something to think about. I'm making the trade-off for the pilot run of going with this because I like the way it looks, and if things go well, we can look at making changes so that it's less process intensive to get the screen correctly aligned, and that's something that we can modify going forward. But for now, that's something that's going to be a little bit slower in assembly. So on the bottom of the case for my first pilot run, I've got this little washer with a magnet to hold it in. Again, this was so that if I need to, I can take them out of the puck, and that's more for me personally. Going through a first product, if something were to happen, I want to make sure it can be removed. But this is also something that if I were to want to do this on 100,000 of them, somebody's got to glue a washer to the bottom of a case. That's added steps to the process to get your product ready to be sold. And so this is something that I could get rid of once I don't need it anymore. I could just not put that in and then just bond it right inside the puck. And so again, things to think about when you're designing not just your product for how it performs and the function that it performs, but how easy it is to create, fabricate, and assemble so that it can be sold to people, or things you need to be thinking about. Okay, the last one on the puck project is the actual hockey puck. Almost threw it at myself. When I first started this and talking to different people, they're like, why on earth do you want to use a puck? Just make a case, a plastic case that looks just like a puck, that's all plastic, and you'll save yourself a ton of time and money. And I was like, I know, but I really like the feel of the puck. But now I'm really understanding what it means. The cost of getting pucks and having them machined is eating my lunch on my bill of materials for cost of getting these things made ready to sell. And it would be way cheaper and easier to just have not just the case be something that the electronics goes in and then sets inside the puck, but just have the entire puck be the case, formed from plastic, and then I can just drop the electronics in and everything works just fine. That would save me a ton of time and money and complexity. Again, I got to glue this little magnet in here for this first run. Extra steps. Again, all things you can be considering when you're doing design for manufacturer conversations. And so, but not even just using a puck and having it CNC. The CNC is pretty simple, but I also needed access for the micro USB charging, so I have to have this CNC'd into the side. So not is it just a simple lay it down, CNC it out. Now it's got to be flipped up. There's alignment, like it's got to be perfectly 90 degrees to the hole, and all these things are added complexity to the process, again, of getting this ready to turn into an actual product. And so I think that's it. I think that's all I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to have some concrete examples of, what DFM can mean, even in a simple project like this. This is a very simple product that I'm making. It's fancy and it's got a screen and everything, but when you talk about making things like iPhones or smartwatches and things like that, all of the things that go into that, DFM becomes a much bigger deal, and it's really something that can save you a lot of time and money through the process. And so there's trade-offs that you have to make. In my case, yes, it would have been a lot easier to assemble and create pucks that were made out of plastic, but that is not the feel that I wanted for the product. I want it to feel like a hockey puck in your hand, which sounds like such a simple, dumb thing, because it's like somebody's just gonna set it up on the desk and they'd never know the difference. And you're right, and if somebody else were doing this, they may want to take that route. But for me, it was important to have an actual rubber puck feel when you pick it up. There's something to that. And so that was a trade-off that I was willing to make. But anyway, these are all things that you can be thinking about that you don't have to think about when you're doing a maker project. And that's, a lot of why I'm sharing this is that I've done maker stuff for so long, and now I'm trying to do product stuff, just the differences. And so none of these things are things that you would think about when you're doing a maker project. It's just, how do I cobble it together to make it do the thing I needed to do? Even if it's gonna do that thing for a long period of time, like even if it's not just a build it and then throw it away. Even if you want to build something to like sense your garden temperature and water and stuff, you want that to be there and be reliable. You still don't have to think about all these things that you would have to think about if you wanted to take that same idea and then make 10,000 of them to sell to other people. And so hopefully you find that a little bit interesting and informative. It has been for me to really have some concrete things to think about and have to deal with as far as DFM goes in an actual product. It's been a great learning experience. So question of the day. Do you have any experience with DFM or any good stories to share that you've worked with personally where you made a little tweak that didn't seem like a big deal, but when it comes to manufacturing and assembly made a huge difference in a project that you've worked on? Would love to hear any of those stories. Stick them down in the comments below. I appreciate everybody watching Daily IoT, the show where together we're learning how to make the Internet of Things one day at a time.